Hey everybody, welcome to CAF Warbird Tube, the show where we talk about World War II, aviation, history, and so much more. Warbird Tube is produced by the Commemorative Air Force, the world's largest flying museum. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and honor through flight and living history experiences. The CAF began the Warbird movement more than 65 years ago, and thanks to the support of individuals like you, we continue to grow strong. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and now our host, Steve Buss. Thanks for watching and keep 'em flying.
Well, good evening and welcome to CAF Warbird Tube. This is episode number 134 of Warbird Tube, and tonight we're going to meet a group of ladies who you already see on screen who are keeping the style and legacy of the 40s alive today. But before we get started, if you could do us a favor, if you haven't already done so, please take a second to like, share, or subscribe and follow us. And if you do subscribe on YouTube, click that bell icon and you'll get notifications when our new episodes are posted. Now, as you're watching tonight, you might have some questions, so just type those into the chat box and we'll try to answer them either during the presentation or before we sign off. Either way, but we'll try to answer all of your questions. Now, joining me from the CAF's Agatha Hangar at the National Aviation Education Center in Dallas, we have 5 members of the Women's Vintage Society of Dallas. Ladies, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Jamie, let's start with you. Let's tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in this vintage society.
So I had moved to the area in 2016, and I was really into vintage fashion. So I actually started the group with Erin, which she'll be introducing herself here shortly. And how that happened is I was starting a meetup group to try to come up with friends or meet friends that also enjoyed vintage fashion. Erin came to one of my meetings and we hit it off. And WVSD was formed literally that night. Yes. And we've been going strong since.
Great. Well, go ahead, Erin.
So I had been into vintage for a few years before I met Jamie, and I'm also not a Dallas native whatsoever. So I was looking for like-minded, vintage-loving friends as well. And I was having such a hard time finding any because they are in every part of the world except for where I was, it felt like. So I was researching like crazy trying to find someone interested in the same things, and I found Jamie's group. So like Jamie said, one thing led to another, and it was like a bomb went off. We had so many ideas from day one and came up with the name together. So, I mean, it snowballed from that day, and before we knew it, in just a few months, we had so many members in the area that you would never know even existed and loved the same things, but there are so many of us out there and we just keep finding each other.
Great.
I can go.
Okay.
So I've been in the group about 2 years, and how I found out about them was they walked into a coffee shop I was working at dressed like this, and I was like, what's going on? And so they told me that they were in the Women's Vintage Society of Dallas, and I loved it because I love 40s. My great aunt and my great uncle, I saw them every year for Thanksgiving, and my uncle was in the war, and so I've always had a love for it. And when I found out you can dress like that, I was just welcomed in. So yeah.
My name is April, and pretty much the same. I would say about 2 years ago, when everything was a little chaotic in the world, I always loved vintage. I just never fell into it completely. And during that time, I was just watching YouTube. I saw Erin's video. Then I was like, what? There's people that do dress like this and they love it. And then she said the Women Vintage Society. I was like, and when we were moving to Frisco, everything was falling into place. So I was just so excited. They welcomed me, and I've just grown each and every time, and I just fell in love with the history and the fashion, everything.
Great.
I'm Allyson. I've been a member since late 2018.
For a long time.
Yeah, for a long time now. And I met these two back here at Wings Over Dallas, actually. I'm an aircraft mechanic, and I had just found out about Wings Over Dallas. So my dad and I showed up, and then my dad says, hey, Al, there's a lot of girls that like to dress up just like you standing over there. And they were just standing in a huddle together, chit-chatting. And I said, these are my people. And and one of the members came up and spoke to me about the group, and she goes, come join our Facebook group. And then it was just like that. It fell into place. I walked with them in the Christmas parade, and it's been history ever since.
How long has the society been organized?
Since 2017.
Okay. And several of you mentioned YouTube. That's sort of the go-to for vintage, I guess, all things. Well, YouTube is all things, but especially vintage. And there are specific channels and things devoted to vintage clothing, not only from the 40s, but from other eras as well.
Yes.
Yes, there is.
I'm talking into my thing. 1940s fashion. And there it was. It was like just watching everyone talk about how they grew from it and how their fashion gotten more. I was just amazed.
Yeah, there's a lot of style evolutions you can find on YouTube for people like us that started out wearing modern clothing, but slowly transitioned into wearing 40s on a daily basis. So those videos have become popular, and I'm guilty of making one of those myself.
So, and that brings up a good point. So you dress like this every day or special occasions?
Yeah, most of us do actually.
Okay.
Yeah,
we do.
yeah. There's a good portion of us that do dress in vintage every day or as often as possible. But we have some members that only dabble in it once in a while for some of our events. And there's no wrong way to do it. It's just how you're drawn, and sometimes it's just a starting point.
Excellent. And the clothing that you have, we keep saying vintage. So are they actually vintage from the 40s or reproductions or a combination?
I can speak, I hope, for many of us do have a lot of true vintage pieces, but it's not, you don't have to wear true vintage to get that vintage aesthetic or that vintage look. So we do have some gals that are able to get reproductions or get pieces that you can find, in a store these days, but they're knowledgeable on the cuts and the looks, and they can make it styled look to a specific decade they want.
Great. Any challenges with keeping 80-year-old fashion still looking good?
Yes, many.
What are some of the biggest challenges?
Seams,
getting them sewn back together.
Colors. So like a lot of these colors are very unstable, and so when you wash them, they'll just, it'll turn my sleeve pink or whatever. So yes, it's very, sometimes you ruin pieces and it's very tragic.
Yes.
But yeah, it's just part of it.
We carry around like sewing kits, and like safety pins.
Yes, we
And
live
you
by
name
safety
it.
pins.
We've had to sew each other up at events. So seams pop, or the thread just disintegrates. We've got moth holes in some clothes. We've learned to darn.
Yes, we have.
We've learned a lot of skills that were like common knowledge for specific decades. Laundering is hard, washing things. Some things, you can't iron. If you iron it, you're going to ruin the fabric. It will bring a shine to it. And then you've got to know how to shape it back into shape after you wash it, because a lot of things shrink. So there's just, it's a lot harder. It's high maintenance clothing, but we love it.
The work makes it so much more worth it, because it's so much more tangible at that point.
Yeah.
Right. And you were coming from an era where you didn't throw things away just because they were maybe a little worn out or had a cut or something like that. This is, again, back to old different values. I don't want to say better or worse, but different values than most people have today. And I like that you mentioned that you have to go back and learn some of the techniques that were popular in the 40s, like darning a garment that today you got a hole in your sock, you throw it out, right? You don't bother trying to fix it.
Right.
We don't do that. And I think we save a lot of pieces because we're not afraid to grab something that's got a hole in it. Or it's got like fade to the color or anything. I mean, some of us, I think, in a way, sometimes like pieces that have like that in it, it's the history.
Yeah.
So we're wearing history, and we're kind of adding our own history to the garment if we're able to save it or fix it or wear it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just the next caretaker.
We're the caretakers.
That's interesting you say that, because that is what a lot of Warbird pilots talk about with their aircraft. They may quote unquote own it, but they consider it to be, they're just a caretaker. They're going to have it for some period of time and pass it on to the next person and hopefully
Right.
make it better. So it's the same sort of thing. It's awesome. Well, a few weeks ago, you all came to the hangar there at the National Education Aviation Education Center and had a little fun, kind of getting ready to go out. So we've got a video clip that we're going to show, and we'll come back and talk a little more about fashion and also about life on the home front in the 1940s. And there you have it. nice little fashion show. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about fashion. And we've got some individual stills of all of your different outfits that you're wearing for that. And maybe you can just describe sort of what it is that we're looking at. So Jamie, I guess we'll start with you.
Okay, so this is an early 1940s gown. It is true to the era. It's a really typical shape and look that you would have seen, especially amongst the sweethearts, with that kind of neckline and especially the tulip sleeve that's going on there. And then the colors, the red and the green. They were not shy to play with colors in the 40s. Definitely not shy at all. You could see them putting colors together that maybe nowadays you'd be like, oh, you wouldn't put that color together. But back then they weren't afraid to. And then, of course, you wouldn't leave without your gloves. And I have a little poppy brooch that I was wearing that day. So, yeah, that's what seen back then.
Oh, there we can see the brooch. Yep.
Pearls. Those are my grandmother's pearls.
Oh, how very nice.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Oh, and that would be me. So that is also a dress from True the Vintage, 1940s, rayon black dress that was laced like beaded in the top. Black gloves, the purse, and you had your minky winkies, I call them, but yeah, they always had those, especially over their suits, day dresses, maybe sometimes, or just when you would go out for cocktails, but mostly suits. And my earrings, pantyhose with the stripe down the middle. There's it in the back. You didn't
Painted
have
on.
those. Yep, you could paint them on, dye with tea. So, and shoes are Reproduction, and the earrings are True to Vintage.
All right.
All
This is
right.
another one with some pretty dramatic color in it.
Yes, this one is a very dramatic look. It is actually by a label called Jordell of Hollywood. And this label in particular was known to copy popular Hollywood designer fashion. And I believe this dress was inspired by a gown created by Gilbert Adrian, who was the designer for The Wizard of Oz. And he was the designer that made Joan Crawford's wide shoulders very popular. So the dress itself features embroidered phoenixes on it that kind of have a paintbrush stroke look to them. So I actually found the original advertisement for it, and it does date to 1946. So I'm just right post-war, so don't sue me. But I
Well,
just love. Go ahead.
And the colors almost have sort of an Asian sort of look to them, which would kind of date it, post-war. But yeah, it's a very intriguing piece.
Yeah, for sure. It has a very odd draping at the bottom of it. All of the material gathers at the bottom. So right when they were allowing us to get some fabric back into the mix after some very strict rationing. So I'm the celebratory gown, I guess you could say. Yes, and
Okay, that's fine. This is a rayon True 40s dress. It's a pattern I've never seen before, so I was really excited when I found it. It's got really strong shoulder pads, which was very popular back then. And then my hat is also a rayon pink hat, and I have pink gloves and a pink purse, so they kind of were matchy back then. And then my shoes are Reproduction. Yeah, so that was a really fun find. Found it at an estate sale, so yeah.
And where do you find most of the pieces? Is it, like you said, at estate sale, vintage shops, eBay, combination of all of the above?
Combo.
Yeah, it's a lot of hunting and yeah.
It's something that we're asked a lot, and it's
Yeah.
not an easy answer because it's literally like treasure hunting. We're searching in every venue that we can think of.
Yeah.
And as more come into the mix, we're like, oh, did you hear about this one? And then we're all searching it. So it's online, it's in person, it's just a lot of digging, really.
Yeah.
Oh, hello, me. Okay, so I am wearing a vintage dress here, but it is not true to the 40s. I would say it's maybe about late 80s or 90s dress, I would say. I got it from a boutique of a mutual friend of ours who sells vintage. And this is kind of a good example of like how you can take a dress from a different era, like a later era, and then just if you accessorize it and detail it correctly, and you can pull it off as a 40s dress. And I'm wearing, but the jewelry I have on is actually 30s. Erin found them for me. I used the little dress clips on the neckline to kind of make the neckline from round to square, which was a really popular neckline style back then. And then of course the matching little belt buckle to go with it. The shoes are Reproduction from Bait Footwear, and I actually made the bracelet and earrings that I am wearing. And I just found them to match as best as I could to the original 30s jewelry as best as I could. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and as we're looking at a few more of the pictures, one of our audience members sent a question in and said, how would you compare the America, in quotes, of the 1940s to today's 2003, especially as it has to do with fashion? How do you compare the two?
In the retrospect of fashion?
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I guess you could say we started rationing again, but by our own means. We definitely use less material now in our everyday clothing. We use a lot more synthetics than we would have back then. The use of polyester, which didn't come about until post 1950s into the 60s. So definitely a change in material, style, cuts, the use of pants more than they would have back then. What do you guys
I think
think?
we're also a lot more lax on how we're able to go out or anything. Maybe that's also a big difference, perhaps. So I mean, back in the 40s, you wouldn't even go out to the grocery store in a house dress.
Yeah.
You would change into something that was more appropriate, and it was a type of manners back then. And then you would come home, of course, and change again. You can even see it in old movies too. They would come home from work or something, and they would be changing and then putting their apron on, and then dressed for dinner. And we don't have to do that anymore. Or I mean, you can if you want to, but it's not something that's considered something you should do.
I think we also have, they had a lot more accessories back then, so we don't walk out with gloves and our hats and all that. So it's more easy access clothing nowadays. So convenience.
It's a definite, very fast fashion sort of timeline right now, and there's nothing wrong with that for people, but it's just it's a far cry, very different.
Yeah.
I don't think clothes are really made to last anymore. And the clothes back then were really made, the idea was to make them last. And they have just some details that, were made by hand or something like that. And a lot of the fashion that we find, people made them from home. So a lot of our clothes are not even wouldn't have been in the store. They were made from home. And that's definitely something that's different as well.
I think the dress that I have on was handmade, actually. It didn't have a tag, and you can see in the inside the seams were much like longer, extra fabric inside, wasn't finished, hemmed at the bottom. So I have about a couple pieces that are made to fit someone.
My very first true vintage 40s piece was handmade too. There was no label. It was like a me-made dress, is like what we would say nowadays.
I'd say that. I'm trying it on. I was like, oh, it was made just for me.
Yay. Now, aside from what you're doing tonight, you also go to different events, different shows, things like that, representing the style and fashion of the 40s. When you're there, are you yourselves, or are you playing a character, or a combination of both?
I would say we're very much ourselves.
Yeah.
So, we're just depicting a moment in history where we want to encourage others to look into the time, and we're very honored to be able to go to these events and just bring more of the Homefront which is often forgotten in a lot of places. And, you know, we're honored to be able to depict that, but we're still very much us.
Yeah, to bounce off of that, something Jamie and I often joke about is when we put this clothing on versus our modern clothing, it's like a light switch goes off.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
we feel even more like ourselves than we would in
Yes.
modern clothing.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
I feel like a feminine woman in my other clothes, but it just, I don't know. You just stand a little taller, you feel a little good, put together, you're like,
People are so much nicer too. We get so many more smiles.
Yes.
We get people coming up and
Yeah.
telling us, "Oh, my grandmother would love this,"
Yeah.
and so they're like, "Can we take a picture of you?" We're like, "Yes,
Yeah.
please. You know, go ahead." And but people, I've noticed that when we go out too, even people's demeanor changes, and we see a lot more even manners, if I dare say, from others just going out. But
Yeah.
but as you asked before, we're still very much ourselves, just because we feel more like ourselves
yeah.
dressed like this too. So
100%.
I think it's kind of safe to say for everyone that like when we eventually worked our way to these phases of vintage, it released who we truly are on the
Yeah.
inside. It was a journey to get to this point,
Yeah.
and the journey keeps getting better just from this point on.
Yeah.
So Richard is wondering, and it kind of bounces off that last question, is if there was some sort of AI generated time travel that you could do, where do you see yourselves in the 40s, in 1943? I mean,
Me, 19,
how?
probably. Smacked in the middle with everything starting. Probably there.
I would say 43 because it's just a number that keeps popping up in my life, I guess, like an angel number. So I would say, yeah, kind of in the middle of everything when it's like when the wartime was at its
Yeah.
peak.
is he asking like where do we think what we would be doing at that
Yes,
time?
yes.
Okay.
Mm.
So
Definitely.
I think we've talked about this quite a bit. Somebody want to go?
Okay, I can give an answer, for example, because this is something I do actively think about. I think each of us being so passionate and interested in this era, we think about where exactly our interests would be during that time. Mine specifically, I have a great love and passion for French fashion during the 1940s, immediately pre-war, during the war, and after. And I do think if I could just transport myself to a time, it would be immediately liberated Paris right after the war, because I love what the French did, especially the Parisians during that time, the people that stayed open during occupation under such strict standards from the Nazis, and the things that they were able to create during that time under such oppression. It's just amazing, the couture and the fashion. It's just, that's my interest, and especially the hats. It's just magical.
And I could just see me at the home, you know, running my house. I could see me with a victory garden and doing my best to make do and mend, and that's how I could see myself. But sometimes I think to myself, I would maybe even sign up as a wave.
Okay.
Yeah. I could see me maybe joining the service back then. So
I think I can definitely see myself as like someone who would have been either like working at a factory or like a woman in uniform, for instance, like join in like one of the auxiliary forces to the military, or recently I've been studying about the Red Cross Clubmobile girls, and I definitely think that was something I would have really have liked to have done, because my mom raised me in hospitality and stuff like that, and that's what those girls did times 10 over there. And so that's something I think I would have done, doing as much as I could. So
Mine would probably be the kitchen. I've always watching my grandmother, watching old movies. I just really thought I was going to get married, have the pajamas, the kids, and everything. And sometimes I kind of run the house like that. But I love the whole, like just the rationing, how making what you don't have into something bigger, into something more. I love to cook. I have Ration cookbooks. I like to dip dive and see what they made and how it tastes. And my, the kids, I try to share that with them too. But I would see myself in the kitchen making men's recipes and stuff.
Well, I'm kind of like Allie. I would love to be like in uniform, and I'm a little bit adventurous, so anything to send me overseas and do something,
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought the donut dollies would be really cool. So I've thought about that, and then I've also thought about being at home and having my garden and just doing my everyday life to be part of the war efforts.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Awesome. When we were watching the video, there was a lot of work that goes into the hairdo of the era. Definitely, again, completely different from what we see today, or even what we saw 20 or 30 years ago. How did you learn how to do that, and to recreate the styles of the 40s?
A lot of pictures and a lot of practice.
Okay.
YouTube.
YouTube. A lot of
Okay.
YouTube.
Yeah, you can find old footage even from back then that is available on YouTube. So a lot of us refer to actual authentic footage to use as a reference. And you can find original hair setting patterns on
Yeah.
Pinterest
Yes.
and set your pin curls exactly how they would have to achieve a look like Lana Turner or Rita Hayworth. There are particular setting patterns you can do with your hair that you can find to use to as a resource.
Yeah, including patterns on how to cut your hair so you can achieve the look that you're looking for. That's out there as well.
Yeah.
You buy vintage magazines, a lot of my
Yeah.
vintage
Oh, okay.
have hair patterns, just like they were saying, how to
Yeah.
put it up.
I think it's the hardest really thing to learn.
It is the
It
hardest.
Is other than putting your whole ensemble together. And it's something that we get asked a lot by others that are interested in possibly dressing this way or even just experimenting, is how do you get your hair? I just can't get my hair. And it's really, I think we can all agree, it's a lot of practice.
It is.
It's a lot of practice and a lot of brushing.
A lot of brushing.
Setting, brushing.
Bobby pins.
Yes.
Bobby
I
pins
think we can
Yeah.
set off metal detectors.
I mean, I don't want
Bobby pins that we have in our hair.
to. I don't want to talk about how many I have in my head, right?
We
And,
keep
and
going.
And Jamie, of course, you brought something back that I hadn't thought of in years when I was watching the video, curlers.
Yes.
Yes, my mom in the 60s used curlers all the time, but I have not seen them in real life since then.
Still there. You can still get them even in department stores. Now, they didn't use sponge rollers in the 40s. I do cheat a little bit there. But everybody's hair is different. You got to find what works for you too. And that's another really important key, is you can watch somebody on YouTube and they're like, well, I'm doing what she's doing and my hair doesn't look like that, because everybody's hair is different. So you just got to keep trying. But let me tell you, those are not comfortable to sleep in.
No.
Used to it, the more you do it.
Yes.
So you will get tougher.
Yeah.
And another thing, if you didn't notice, we all had our headscarves on, and all of us sleep with that headscarf over our hair to protect it from the curls falling out, for one, but also it makes it more comfortable while you sleep.
Yeah, it just provides like a little extra support and a little extra barrier when you're just laying down at night.
Yeah, we get brownie points for going out with our curlers in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something we wouldn't normally do. We keep
And as we're talking, we keep coming back to YouTube, the internet, Pinterest, things like that. I know from CAF units who have hanger dances, there's been a great resurgence in not only the period clothing, but also in dancing, and the big band sound. And I think some of that comes from the internet, people sharing interests. I mean, do you think you would be able to do this same sort of thing even 20 years ago, to be able to have access to this much information, or you probably have to dig a lot deeper?
Probably would have to dig a little deeper.
Yeah.
I mean, what we have now, it's so easy. We can literally go back in time if we wanted to. But then I think to step out the box, to think something different, to start something and watch somebody else take it. That's just another part that you can see how great humans are, our minds are, when we don't have what we can make out of nothing. So, I mean,
we do use a lot of things from the era, though. So there was stuff there that we could have used like 20 years ago, but we couldn't see somebody do it from beginning to end.
Yeah, right.
Like nowadays. So that's a plus. But there's minuses to having all the information out there on the internet too, because it's flooded. Sometimes, you know, true fashion from the 40s is flooded with more modern interpretation. So if you were to put like, you know, 1940s hair in Google, I guarantee you're not going to get a lot of real 1940s hair in it. You're going to get a lot of renditions of it, which is not wrong, but it, you know, which is not bad, but if you're looking for something more specific. So there's minuses to it as well, but a lot of perks for sure. Having all that at our fingertips to go, oh, I'm going to check that out.
So how do you separate the wheat from the chaff as far as what's more authentic than maybe a reproduction?
I mean,
a lot of looking at original, original magazines, original ads, movies. Movies are really big because there's movement in the movies, so you can see from all angles. I think our best bet, and girls correct me if I'm wrong, but it's to try. The best bet to really try to find something that's true to the era is to actually grab things from the era.
Yeah, it's definitely the best resource.
Yeah. I like just to find old photographs at antique stores.
Exactly.
Because I like to do the everyday 40s girl look, because a lot of the old Hollywood, you know, they had a certain look, they had a certain hair. I have really curly hair, so at first I was like, oh, no way I could ever achieve that. But then I started finding pictures of just average women with curly hair, and I started doing, you know, those looks.
Well, one of the things that, I mean, we've talked a lot about fashion, but one of the things we wanted to talk about too as well is the home front. And that, you know, for a lot of people is something that's not discussed a lot. You know, we talk about conflicts in Europe and the Pacific and the specific battles and dates of history and all this sort of thing. But back home, there was a third front. There was another struggle that was going on. So if you can, just kind of set the scene for what it was like being here in the States.
Who wants to go first?
I think, I mean, for the U.S., it's definitely different from everywhere else. Down rationing is so much different. Was there rationing? Yes. I think 1942 was America shortly after Pearl Harbor. So you had your first tires, gas, cars, started rationing, then you go down to your sugars, coffees, pantyhose. Some things started. The clothing was also, so I have a longer skirt, then they start hiking up to the knees. So you just have everything, literally you're waking up and everything's changing, but everything coming together to fight one war to win. So to see how everyone can do that, especially women, because eventually you're walking town, you see less men because they're going into war. And then you have women fighting another battle, and that's just, you know, going to work, settling your house and picking up extra things, victory gardens. And then on top of it, still looking put together, like you can't break us and stand strong. And really, I think especially as a woman, you know, I think we can create an atmosphere where you go in a home, you're like, oh no, mom's mad if she's, you know, but when you're put together and you know what's happening, it's just such a different mindset in there, especially when the men would come back. You know, the USO, there's like 3,000, there were like clubs in America when the soldiers would come back. Women would be there to host, to dance, to play cards, ping pong, just to talk to them so they can remember what they're fighting for. And it was just everyone coming together. So
exactly. Yeah. And our whole infrastructure, like it just took a turn overnight. Because like not only did rationing begin pretty quickly, but then the men were just leaving in droves. And so, you know, American women and the people that didn't go off to fight, they definitely have to be like, okay, well, we definitely have to step it up. And And so women started, just going into jobs just almost immediately. And like not just aircraft plants, but like and producing, artillery shells and all that other kind of things. And then it was also like, driving the trolley bus or, or driving the milk wagon, it was all of those things banded together. And it was just because they had to like keep everything going from just like down to like basic everyday needs to actually producing things to fight the war. And, it really opened doors for women at the time. But I wouldn't be in the field I am today had it not been for women like this who just stepped up and did it. And they didn't do it to like break a glass ceiling to, prove something like, oh, I'm gonna, but I'm sure they were like, well, this feels really good to do this. But their first thought was to save our home and bring these boys back. And that was definitely.
Reminds me of a poster where she's rolling up her sleeve.
Yeah.
She's like, all right, bring it.
Bring it.
Bring it. And she, and the woman is definitely.
Sorry.
There it is. That's the epitome.
War mother.
I told you I would have been a war mother.
But it was not only like, just keeping everything going business wise, and war production wise, it was like what April was just saying, it was morale. And, even when you're trying to keep up everything, it's like it wears you down. And so they definitely just had to keep on a bright face and it kind of reminds me like how red lipstick is, and, because it brightens your smile and it uplifts your mood. And so, and our adversaries did not like it. And so American women just wore it even more because it's like, oh, you don't like it? Well, here you go. And they went as far as to make lipstick colors for the actual women who were in the military, like Marine red or Navy red or honor red and stuff like that.
Red.
And so like every little aspect of life changed just overnight to the war effort.
That's a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up because because in pictures that you see, in color pictures from that era, women have bright red lips more so than before or after. And that was the reason why. It's like, the opposition didn't like it, so bring it on, right?
Yeah.
Now you mentioned, someone mentioned the Victory Gardens and also Victory Kitchens. I'd not heard the term Victory Kitchen before. Tell me about that.
The Victory Kitchen is a podcast by a lovely lady. She studies food rationing and she really goes in depth about it. But I guess you could have called them Victory Kitchens back then, if you were.
Sure. I mean, especially like at a canteen, right? They had canteens back then. So anywhere where food was being produced for like the war efforts or for servicemen, you could probably call it a Victory Kitchen. But and then yes, Victory Gardens were really big, and it actually everybody was encouraged to grow their own food because a lot of things were cut off for us when Pearl Harbor was bombed and the wars were going on. We received a lot of things overseas, and it was all cut off by U-boats or whatever else or occupations. And so to grow your own food, it enabled not only to us to feed ourselves, but for more food to go to the servicemen because they really got the best of the best, and that's what the Homefront wanted.
And have you tried any recipes following? You haven't? Okay. Following the ration books.
But their meatloaf is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
So-
I will attest to that. I tried April's meatloaf she made from a true recipe from the war, and it was actually really good.
It's yeah. I mean, and meatloaf was very popular back then, just because the less meat. So you had, but if you didn't have meat, they would use fillers as from liver, soy, beans, or cereal to go with the meat. I've made war cake that has no egg, no butter, and no egg, butter, and milk.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting cake, but it tastes amazing.
It's good.
It's good.
It's so good.
So there are some things that were like yay, and there were nay.
Nay.
My kids like to say it, Mom, it's history for a reason. It needs to stay. But there's some stuff that's pretty
Good. And I know coffee was a big ration item, and I know Jamie, you said you weren't sure you'd be able to make it through the coffee rationing.
I don't think I could. No, I'm just gonna say that right now. I think oh gosh, I think they could only have like a couple cups a week. I might be wrong. There's World War II ration challenges out and about on social media platforms such as like Facebook. So you can try to do like this World War II ration challenge. And I follow this one woman and she's like, nope, I can't do it. I have to have a cup every day. So she quit really quick. And I'm like, yeah, I would be there too. I don't know if I could do it. Actually, you know, if I was really back in like 1942, yes, I could do it. But if I had a choice, no.
Yeah.
In comparison to what we have today.
You know, no.
And, I can't remember which one of you had mentioned some coffee substitute that was popular in the 40s.
Yes, I learned it from the Victory Kitchen podcast, actually. It was called Postum, and don't quote me on what it's made of. I don't remember exactly, but it was a very popular coffee substitute. And granted, it's not like coffee, but I tried it for a few days, and like it's enough to like give you a little bit of a boost in the morning. So I'm imagining when the rations got a little bit sparse for coffee, that was a good thing to like put into place. And then, but some people actually prefer it, because of the caffeine situation in coffee, it doesn't give you as much of a crash at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that. But yeah, it was definitely doable. I tried it for about a week.
That's it.
That's it. I'm a mechanic. I cannot go without caffeine ever.
Well, and some of the things we're looking at here are these are things that are in the National Aviation Education Center where you are tonight. Does it feel different to be surrounded by these sorts of I don't want to say props, but they're artifacts is a much better word, along with your vintage clothing?
I love it.
It feels homey to me.
It feels homey.
I think a lot of us, it's not just what we wear, but we also fill our homes with a lot of these pieces. So to walk in somewhere like this, it almost feels like home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a lifestyle for some of us in the group. We collect these things ourselves. That's why we also have our own exhibit that we put on. We have our own pieces from the war that we use as a display in our house, and we decorate with it. We have the magazines that we read from. So it's just a part of our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think some of us, I think I can safely say, like, our houses look like museums, basically.
My house is a museum during Christmas time. That's my biggest. Yes.
Okay.
Christmas.
But the museum here is amazing, and I love that they have this home front room. It's phenomenal. So
Yeah.
Yes.
we enjoy being in here. And looking at everything. We're like, ooh, we want this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to make sure Blaine frisks you on the way out to make sure no artifacts go out, right?
Empty pockets.
Yeah.
But you also have a display, I know you have at Wings Over Dallas in previous years, and other places. So is that, you just bring things from your homes and create that exhibit?
Yes.
Aside from magazines, and everyone else brings all, like, from clothes to jewelry to
I think everybody's
everything.
contributed. Our idea we started was because, again, the home fronts just tends to be overlooked. We work with a lot of veterans programs as well, at least we try, and we know a lot of veterans, and they will tell you that without the home front, they wouldn't have won the war. Matter of fact, a gentleman by the name of John Lucky Luckadoo, he actually started a home front holiday in May. So, and it's called Homefront Heroes, but we knew that it needed to be taught. It can't be forgotten. These Rosies, the children that even stepped up to the plate can't be forgotten. So we started bringing just pieces that we had at home, and all the members, when they contribute pieces here and there, they do. I do a lot of shopping. I hope my husband's not watching. Honey, it's all my cause. But yeah, and so now we seek out pieces, and we try to find pieces because there's so many different things of the home front. We're trying so hard to show as much as we can what the Homefront was. I don't know if we could ever get an exhibit large enough to show everything that was done on the Homefront.
No,
Yeah.
not
Never.
at all.
And just a few more pieces from the collection.
Yeah, so a lot of us actually collect what are called sweetheart pieces from during the war. They were popular pieces of jewelry or accessories that were patriotic in style, and they could be sent home by your loved one from your husband or brother or father from overseas. And some of them have the Army logo on them or whatever branch of the military, and it would be sent to their mother or wife or girlfriend. And you could say, oh, this is in honor of whoever who's serving overseas right now. So you'll find pieces, even some that say remember Pearl Harbor or that have patriotic eagles on them. And especially, let's not forget the Victory V. I think
Yeah.
each and every one of us own a Victory V brooch, like
Yeah.
you see. It was just a very popular piece that, you know, Victory was, we all wanted Victory. So everyone proudly displayed it wherever they could on their clothing or in their home. It was everywhere during the war.
Yeah, so like those are buttons that you're seeing on the screen. You can see
And speaking of everywhere,
Yes.
Everywhere.
It was
Everywhere.
Yeah,
Hair.
Victory was everywhere.
Victory,
Victory
yes.
for the duration. That was just common like language back then.
Yeah, Victory rolls.
Yes.
Got victory roll.
and what are we looking at here?
That is a Victory quilt.
Okay.
Very hard to find. I can't believe that I found it. And you can see that it's really, it's very patriotic. We got the Victory V's going. We got the Army Air Corps emblem on there as well. Again, anything at home was just done for victory. Maybe a loved one made this for her son in the service for when he got home, or it could have been used to raise money. There was a lot of like that kind of thing going on with the Red Cross with quilts, like raising money, like a raffle, that you could raffle quilts like this off. So you wouldn't believe the things that are out there, or at least once upon a time existed. We're always happy when we find something that was just all, again, based around victory up for the war.
And speaking of,
Victory. And that's a VE day, I believe. I think it's May on there. Yes, that's a VE day. Of course, you know, the war didn't end for us at VE Day. It ended over in Europe, but it didn't end for us. So,
with just a few moments left, any final thoughts and some call to action is if there's someone watching tonight who wants to join the group or find out more, how do they get in contact with you?
So you can find us on Facebook at the Women's Vintage Society of Dallas. We do have a public page, but we also have a private group, and we're always accepting new members. And it does not matter if you're brand new to dressing vintage or curious about it, or if you're advanced and been doing it for years. We're welcome to any woman who wants to join and become a part of it. And you don't have to go out to every single event or contribute. You can stand in the sidelines and watch, or you can contribute and create your own events as much as you want to. So contact us through there. You're always more than welcome to reach out to Jamie or myself and anyone else in the group that you want advice from. We're always open.
and I mean, you see us here, we're very 40s, but we're very open to other decades too, 50s and 60s, and we've got 70s girls in there. And
Yeah, and some events, you know, it's like, hey, can you come dress 50s today or something? And we're like, yeah, sure, we can do it.
now I prefer 40s, but I'll bring out my 60s dress.
Very good. Any events coming up? I know you did an event for President Eisenhower's birthday a little while ago, but anything coming up this fall and winter?
We will be here Veterans Day weekend for the Aviation Discovery Fest. And you can actually find our Homefront exhibit on display here, actually in the Homefront classroom, which is really, really exciting. So that's our next event. We've also might have some fashion shows in the future. We've been reached out to by a lot of museums that are wanting that more accurate depiction of a vintage fashion for specific decades. And that's actually been really filling our calendar lately.
Yeah.
And we're really happy to be able to support these museums that are all about history. So that's coming up as well. And you can see us in the Dallas Holiday Parade, which is the first Saturday in December. And it's televised, so just be out there, you know, root for us. Yay!
There you go. And our audience, there are a couple of comments here that this one is from Richard. It says, this group is really stage door canteen worthy. So congratulations. And Patrick says, great photo shoot, really added to the presentation. So see, your stars are ready.
That's a good compliment.
Yes,
Yes.
we appreciate that.
Well, I thank you for joining us tonight and giving us a little glimpse back into the home front of the 1940s. We certainly appreciate it, and I'm sure folks will look forward to seeing you at the Dallas Aviation Fest in just a couple of weeks on Veterans Day. And thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. Again, don't forget to click the like, subscribe, or follow button so we can let you know about the future shows. As always, if you have any ideas for topics you'd like us to cover or any feedback on any of our shows, we'd love to hear from you. Just send Leah Block an email at media@cafhq.org. Ladies, again, thank you for being here and sharing your Women's Vintage Society of Dallas. And hopefully folks will check you out on Facebook, and you'll get a few more members to come join you and enjoy the fun, right?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And until next time, from the Commemorative Air Force, I'm Steve Buss. Have a good night.